They gave us the Bible and took our land. They told us to turn the other cheek while they whipped our backs. They said, "Forgive your enemies," but who was forgiving us? Today we're asking the hard question that most people are too afraid to ask. Did Christianity make black people weak? Did the religion that was forced upon our ancestors during slavery actually strip us of our power? And more importantly, what would black resistance look like if Christianity was never introduced to us? Warning, this is not a conversation for the faint of heart. Again, this is not a conversation for the faint of heart, but we need to have it. So let's break it all the way down. So, stay tuned as we begin to dig into this interesting and very important conversation. So let's begin from the beginning. One thing we don't like to acknowledge is that Christianity was not the original religion of black people prior to chattel enslavement. Let that sink in. Now I know that may be shocking to some and enraging to others, but again, we're starting with the facts. Christianity is not the original religion of black people. Before European colonization, before the transatlantic slave trade, African civilizations had spiritual systems that predate Christianity by thousands of years. Kemetic spirituality in Egypt, Ifa in West Africa, Voodoo, and other indigenous practices that connected us directly to nature, ancestors, and divine wisdom. One tidbit to know is that African spirituality, they are not theologians, they are cosmologians. African spirituality in the African continent, our ancestors were cosmologists. They understood the creator and how all things were connected: the plants, the earth, the wind, the stars, the moon, how everything was interconnected, and how to use that which was given to us by the creator for our benefit. So the first question we have to ask is, so why do so many black people today think Christianity is our religion? And it's simply because it was forced onto us through violence, colonization, and enslavement. The truth, many of us still aren't willing to address and admit. Now let's talk about how Christianity was weaponized. Slave owners weren't just beating our ancestors into submission. They were brainwashing, reconditioning them through religious indoctrination. Enslaved Africans and indigenous people weren't allowed to read, but guess what book they were allowed to hear? You guessed it, the Bible. But not the full Bible in its context, only the parts that reinforced obedience and being docile and following orders. Here are a few of examples of the scriptures that were drilled into our ancestors to indoctrinate them. Ephesians 6 and 5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear. Colossians 3 and 22. Slaves, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters. Romans 13 and 1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. Let's be honest. They weren't teaching us about liberation, power, or self-determination on those slave plantations. They were using religion as a control tactic. They made us believe that being a good Christian meant accepting oppression, waiting for a reward in heaven, and never rising up to fight for your inalienable rights. Now let's talk about something that I know is going to sting a bit. The role of the black preacher. Did you know that on plantations, white slave masters handpicked certain enslaved men to be preachers. Why? Because these men were used to control the minds of other enslaved Africans to keep them in check in oppression. They weren't preaching about freedom or justice. They were preaching about obedience and submission and not going against the slave owner. They preached that it was God's will for us just to take it, oppression, and obey. Even today, we have black pastors and preachers who tell us to pray about it instead of taking action, who tell us to love our enemies instead of holding them accountable, who focus more on building mega churches, synagogues, and mosques than rebuilding our communities. So I have to ask the question, has Christianity turned black people into passive believers instead of powerful revolutionaries? So let's flip the script. What would black resistance have looked like without Christianity? What if Nat Turner's rebellion wasn't the exception, but the rule? What if we had kept our African spiritual practices and our indigenous practices that taught us to fight and not submit? What if instead of waiting for justice in heaven, we demanded justice on earth? I want you to think about it. Every major black liberation movement that truly shook the system had to break away from Christian indoctrination. The Nation of Islam, for example, rejected Christianity and focused on black self-sufficiency. Another example is the Haitian Revolution. The only successful slave revolt in history was led by voodoo priests, not Christian pastors. The Black Panthers didn't tell us to turn the other cheek. They told us to arm ourselves and defend our people. So where do we go from here? I never like to just talk about the problem, but offer solutions. I'm not just saying that all Christianity is bad. I'm saying that the version of Christianity that was forced on us was designed to make us weak. And if we don't start questioning it, we'll keep repeating the same cycle over and over again that has not benefited us from day one. Some of the things that we need to do is to re-educate ourselves, research African spiritual systems that connect us back to our true roots. It's time to take action. Stop waiting for justice in the afterlife. Demand it now. It's time to stop being docile and reclaim our power. Faith should empower us, not keep us in chains. And as the scripture says in the Christian Bible, faith without works is what? Dead. It's of no good use. So let's put that faith to work to bring about black liberation. So again, I have to ask, has Christianity made black people weak? Or has it been used as a weapon against us? I want you to drop your thoughts in the comments and let us talk about it. And as always, like, share, subscribe, and repost, because this is the conversation they don't want us to have. This has been Sankofa Sessions Podcast with your host, Chief Apostle Veronica Israel. Always remember, you are powerful, you are creative, you are the epitome of the divine consciousness that created the universe. You are God in flesh having a human experience, and never let anyone tell you otherwise. Until next time, peace be with you.